ECMAScript 5 as before. So here's the same thing in ECMAScript 5. My phone service looks kind of the same as you would in Angular 1. The constructor function looks kind of the same, but then you'll see here now I've got to manually create an annotations array, and then I've got to create a component object for the annotation, and then you'll see the data look kind of the same that I was passing in there. To inject that, I've also got to add a parameters variable to my function that passes in the name of the service that I'm injecting with the inject function, and then I need to add a down content loaded listener to fire things up using Bootstrap after it's loaded. So this all looks kind of messy. So what they did for us is they created a DSL for ECMAScript 5 that makes it look a little bit more like it would if you're using TypeScript. So you'll see here then I can use my ngCore component, which I can then pass in that data, and then it can be chained into a class function where I can set the constructor, and then I can use that array method that I'm used to in Angular 1 to set things up. So most of the time, if you are at ECMAScript 5, you're going to want to be using this DSL because that'll be a lot simpler for you. So for the ECMAScript 5 people, one thing I want to point out here is if you look at the Angular guide, right, you can see here I've got what a good 16 different entries here for Angular 2 for TypeScript. If I go and look at Angular 2 for JavaScript, right, there's very little. So even if you aren't using TypeScript, you're going to have to at least learn it, because pretty much all your examples that you're going to find are going to end up being in TypeScript. All right, so here's a picture then of what a Angular 2 app looks like. So we have just different modules that have stuff in it. We still have an injector like we did before, but now we're working mainly with components. Components will have property bindings into your template. Templates will have bindings to events back in your components. And then they have metadata then that describes how the component works in Angular. And your templates can also use directives, which also don't have metadata that describes their information. So let's talk about modules. So Angular 2 no longer provides modules. That's completely gone. Instead, it expects you to use the TypeScript or ECMAScript 6 version of modules instead. So whereas in Angular 1, I had to create a module, and if I wanted to use other modules, I had to import them in. Now here you'll see that we're just using the standard ECMAScript 6 imports. So if you're using ECMAScript 5, you're going to want to use something like require.js or common.js then to modularize your application. So components then become the main building block of Angular 2. So Angular 2 then becomes an application becomes a tree of components. And every Angular 2 app must have at least one component, so that's your main component inside there, then that's going to have other components inside of it building that tree. And that component class then becomes the execution context for the template. So instead of scope, you're accessing stuff that's on that component class inside of your template. So it's kind of like if you're using the controller as syntax today, that's pretty much the way it works now. There's no more scope available. And the component requires a component annotation to tell Angular that it's a component and give it information about it so it can get it loaded properly. So controller is gone, scope is gone. Those concepts don't exist anymore. Components also have lifecycle hooks. Here's like a list of all the different hooks that are available. So things like the after view init, in the past we would have to add a ng init tag in our HTML to type an initialization function. Now we would do a callback here. In the past you had to actually listen for a destroy event on the scope to clean up afterwards. Now let's call back, and you can see an example of that in a moment here. So here's an Angular 1 controller. This is, let's say you've got a storefront that's got a page that gives you add-on products that you can add on. We're passing in a product store here. I've got a init function that I will load the add-ons to clean up afterwards, and I've got to listen to the destroy function And again, I'm going to set up my controller, pass in the annotations for the dependencies. And then this would probably be what your HTML would look like. I've got to put the engine in here, and my add-on items are actually a directive that I'm using inside of there. The controller knows nothing about that. Now the component, right, it's going to, if you're using TypeScript, you're actually going to implement interfaces to give you your callbacks for your init and your destroy. And you'll see here, to be able to use a directive inside your template, you've actually got to declare it in your component declaration, otherwise the template won't be able to understand the add-on item control component. Also, your component can pass in, tell what classes that it depends upon for dependency injection. We'll talk about this a little bit more. That's actually probably not going to do what you expect it to do, so stay tuned for that. All right, so templates. So Angular calls templates HTML+, so they're actually using some additional characters that are valid but not usually used. So the first thing before we talk about templates is they make a very big distinction between an HTML attribute and a DOM property. So an HTML attribute is something that is defined by HTML. Properties are defined by DOM. Angular 2 is going to bind to the DOM properties, not to the attributes. So attributes initialize DOM properties. So if you think about HTML and image tag, there's going to be a source value on there. That's a string. That's an HTML attribute. When your browser builds the DOM from that, it's going to create a DOM property, a DOM element of type image, and it's going to take the property of source and set that, and then the HTML goes away, and then the binding actually happens to that source property on the DOM element. And those can be the same, but they're not the same thing. So let's look at some property bindings here. There are three different types of property bindings. There's the element property, so that's like, again, the example is a image DOM element, and you might bind to the source property on there. Our components can have properties, input and output properties that we can bind to, and directives can have properties. So here's an example of one property. This is a property binding. In Angular 1, we might have used in a directive the little @ sign for a string binding, so that's only one way coming in. Angular 2, we do bind dash and the property name. But normally you're going to be using the shorthand, and that's where you're using those square braces. So all the examples you're going to see, everybody else is going to be doing it this way. This is only available if you happen to be using some HTML processor that doesn't like those brackets. So you can also, again, we talked about attributes. We had a big talk about attributes. Column span, for example, is only an attribute. It's not a non-property element. So they do allow you to bind to the initial value for the property. And so you can do attribute.property, and that's just going to set the initial value that gets put into the DOM property. To bind to a class value, you do class.classname, style dot whatever the style name is.
Can you stand behind your computer? Or is it, you have a
Oh, I'm sorry. All right.
That's cool. Oh, that works.
Okay.
Is
that better? All right. So then here's some examples of some of the things in Angular 1 that I might use, like ng source now becomes the source property in the element. Href, same thing. ng show now becomes just a binding to the visible property. And you'll see hide becomes hidden. Style changes quite a bit. Instead of ng style color going red, it's now style.color equals red. Class becomes class.name, and you can see there's an example of the condition.
that your frame style?
Yes, style.whatever the style is. All right, so we also have event bindings. So event bindings we can bind to an element event, a component event, and a directive event. So here's an example then. Have to use the blacklist and the ability that here, the example we call submit on whatever the is in the scope. And you go to 2, we put on in front of it. But again, you're usually going to be using the shorthand, which is to put parentheses around it. And if you want it to bubble up, you put a little tick sign in front of it. I actually don't know what the normal is for that yet. I haven't figured that out. So here's some examples from Angular 1 and G-Click becomes click. Again, these are all very much simple to figure out. It's whatever the name of the element is in HTML, whatever that event is, that's what you're going to use with parentheses. All right, two-way bindings. So in Angular, you'd use the equal sign normally in your directives, and that would bind that value into your directive, and your directive could change the value and it would update back into scope. In Angular 2, it's called bind on, and the shorthand is square braces and then a parenthesis. But actually, there is no more two-way binding in Angular. That actually translates into the bottom there. It actually turns it into two bindings. It turns into a property binding, which is a binding from the scope into your element or controller. And then it creates an event binding that will then handle the change the other way. So it handles the two-way by setting up two bindings. We now also have local variables. And what local variables do is they give you the ability to access that element right inside of your HTML. So here's an example where on the video tag, I put # movie player, and now movie player is a variable inside the rest of my HTML that lets me access that video element. And here's an example where I've got a button and I can call play on it when I click on it. Now, if you don't want to use #, you can put a bar in front of there. And you'll see the bottom is an example of using an input. So input, I've actually given that input element a name, tells me what to do, and then underneath that, then I put a binding to the value property on that input, and then every time I change the input, it's going to automatically update that value in the property here.
Is that the DOM element, or is that the Angularized version?
Well,
it's literally the physical DOM element.
It's going to be the DOM element, but Angular is going to be adding them the change list before you go to the covers. Now, template elements are kind of interesting, and we'll talk about them a little more when we get to directives too. It becomes a syntactical sugar to make it easier to write directives and modify your HTML layout. So things like ng repeat that we did in the past, those are the type of things. So here's an example with ng repeat. I would normally put on that list element. Instead, now it becomes ng4 with a star sign in front of it. Now, whenever you see that star font sign, what's going to happen is Angular is going to actually convert that into a template before your HTML actually goes onto the browser. And the reason they do this is, if you imagine inside that li tag, if there was, let's say, an image that tag that was loading an image, the browser would still have to load that, even though it's not going to display until they actually get some data here. So by putting in a template, that stuff inside the template now is just text.
You don't need the index for free, you have to actually add that portion for it.
No, that part down there, the longhand part.
No.
Oh, the index, yeah, that's right, yes, you do have to get the index now, you do have to create a variable.
Okay.
Yep.
So how is it reiterating the, or adding and removing elements?
Well, under the covers in it, so ng4 is actually directed, and once you get into this a little more in a bit, that it's going to actually have code then that's looking at that.
Okay.
So,
Fair enough.
Yeah, how do you debug this?
yeah, so I've actually got some examples of these directives in a bit here. All right, we got input-output variables, so you can create parameters for your directives and your components. So here's an example from their Angular 2 tutorial. This is detail that shows information about a hero. So imagine this is inside of a list of heroes. And so we want to be able to bind the currently selected hero into the hero for my component. And then we also want to get a callback whenever someone clicks on it deleted, right? So you can see again, we're using the square brackets for property bindings into it, and then parentheses around the events that we're firing from our component. So if you're using TypeScript, it's actually pretty simple. You put a input annotation in front of your variable that's going to take the input variable, and an output in front of the variable that's going to have your event fire. And so you can use an event emitter, and then that's how the events are going to get fired. If you're using ActiveScript 6, you don't have annotation, so instead in your component, you can add inputs and outputs and actually put the names of the variables that contain the inputs and the outputs. Now, pipes are the Angular 2 replacement for filters. So filter is gone, but it's replaced by a very similar thing called pipes. So here's an example. Looks just like a filter written in the code. But the way you set one up is different. Here's a way we created a filter in Angular 1. We call filter on the app module, give it a name, and then pass in a factory function that returns our filter. And that function takes the input and returns the output value. In Angular 2, we now have to use a pipe annotation. Give it a name in the annotation, and then we have to create a class that's got a transform function on it. It takes two values. It takes the input value, also a second array of strings, which are the arguments, and then it returns the value after it's been converted. So here's an example of raising something to a power where you would pass in a number, and then the parameter would be what power you want to raise it to, and we're taking the math function then to raise it to that power. Then to use it in my HTML, my template, you'll see here that I've got in my component that's using this, I've actually got to define what pipes I'm using inside my component to be able to use it in my template. And you'll see this pattern a lot through here. There's a lot of places where you have to declare what types of things you're using inside of your components. Okay, so routing. If you use the standard Angular 1 built-in routing stuff, during the configuration phase, you grab the route provider, and then on there, then you call win function then to pass in the name of the route you want to supply, the template for it, as well as controller. And then you could also do it otherwise for everything else. In Angular 2, instead we're going to be using a route config annotation. And this then you're going to pass in an array of route configurations that would have the path, a name, and then the component then that is used when you go to that route. Then inside of your template, that last line, the router outlet, then is where this router then is going to actually place those different components as you switch back and forth. And you notice above it there, I've got router link as binding properties. So you can actually put those outside of there as binding properties, and they'll actually create links in there to link you to change to route different elements. So directives, we kind of talked about these a little bit. Components are directives. Then we also have structural directives, and we have attribute directives. So we have now 3 different types of directives. So components, again, we talked about quite a bit here already. It's a directive that has a template, and this is going to remain building block of your Angular application. On structural directives, again, we talked about this a little bit when we look at the HTML. These are things that change the DOM by adding or removing DOM elements. So these transform that element that has the directive on it into a template. And then the directive then creates and destroys contents of that template in the DOM. And it's using that star sign as the syntactical trigger. So here's an example of the ngIf, which is a built-in directive. And so you'll see we got that star sign in front of it. We got the name of the directive, and then we can pass in some data to it. In this case, it's going to be a condition, true-false condition. And under the covers, an Angular is actually going to take and translate that into a template. And then it's going to say, since we're passing stuff in, it's actually going to become a binding with the same name as the directive. And then it's going to put then the contents that that directive's on inside of that template as your template. So as an example, let's build the opposite of it. Let's build ourselves an unless. So this is, instead of showing it if that condition is true, we're going to show it if the condition is false. So you need to put a directive annotation on here, give it a selector name, and that's what it's going to be called by. And then your constructor is going to have to take in a template reference and a view container reference. So the template reference is going to give you a reference to that template. The view container is going to give you a reference to that area where the template is that you want to go and update with. And then since we're bringing the input in, we have to put an input annotation there. And you'll see then that my property is the same name as my annotation, so that I can just set the annotation equal to a value. And you'll see here, this is the TypeScript setter. So this is creating a setter, so it looks like a property, but it's actually calling a function when you change it. You'll see here that if the condition is false, we want to show it. So I'm going to grab my view container called create embedded view on it, passing the template reference, which will then go in and place that contents of that template into that area on your page. Otherwise, if the condition is true, we'll clear the template and it'll go away. And so here's an example of what that then would look like in your HTML. Star my unless equals condition. Now we also have another type of directive, which is an attribute directive. So this is something that changes the appearance or behavior of a DOM element. So it doesn't add or remove stuff, it just basically is changing one that exists. And here's an example of a very simple directive that if you called my highlight, that if you place it on an element, it's going to set the background color to yellow. So again, you have to put a directive annotation on it. You have to give the selector name so Angular knows what it's called in the HTML. And this constructor needs to take a element reference, which will give you a reference to the element that you're attached to, and a renderer. And then here you'll see we'll call on the renderer set element style, changing the background color to yellow. Now you can actually take and change the element directly, but it's recommended that you go through the renderer instead.
Is this stuff like dependency injected then, or how is, I mean, because we're not having sort of type constraints on this, is it looking at the dependencies on the construction of that? Or how that working, or is that just the arguments they're always?
It's just the argument. So if you got a, yeah, so if you got a directive and it doesn't have a star sign in front of it, then it's going to try and pass in the reference to the element in the renderer.
Okay.
If there's a star sign in front of it, then it's going to do the extra work to turn in the template and give you a reference to the template. And so here's an example then of using my new highlight annotation. And again, you'll see I have to have a directives array that tells you I'm going to use a highlight directive in here, and that makes it available to your template. Now here's an example of a more complex directive. So I'm taking my highlight directive now and making it so that I want to be able to tell when they do mouse enter and mouse leave on my element to change the highlight color. So you're able to then have this additional metadata here for the host that lets you capture events from the host. So here I'm saying I want to capture the mouse enter and mouse leave events and have them call these functions on my directive. And I've also then added a new input for my highlight. So I can set my highlight equal to a highlight color. I can also optionally then set in a separate binding for a default color. And then I've gone and set up then, again, the constructor with the element ref and the renderer, and then a mouse enter and mouse move. On the mouse enter, it's going to set the highlight color. Otherwise, it's going to clear it. And so now then when I use that, you'll see I put brackets around my highlight directive because I want to pass in the color, because that's I found that name as an input variable. And then I've also got an optional separate binding to a default color. Okay, so Angular also gives us some help with forms. It gives us some support for some, again, their version of two-way binding as well as error handling. Now, from a component standpoint, you can see here, this looks like any other component. I've just got some data on it. I've got a function that we call. I've got a selector. I've got a template URL that I'm binding it to. Where all the fun stuff is actually in the template itself. So ngForm is kind of our stuff that binds us together. So I can add an ng submit event on there, and that will capture when the form is submitted, and that will call and submit on there. Now you see that pound hero form equals ngForm. That's the secret sauce to be able to get a pointer to the form object from Angular into hero form variable. And you'll see down on my button then, I've tied the disabled property to that expression there. It says hero form.form.valid. So if the form is valid, if the form is not valid, that disabled will be set to true, and it will be disabled, and then when it becomes valid, it will become enabled. And then the input element there, you'll see, again, we saw the ng model binding earlier, but now we've also added a ng control, giving it the name of control. And then if we do that combined with the # name equals ng form, now I'm going to have a variable called name that points to that input control. And so then you'll see underneath here, here's a div that shows a name is required error message, and it's hidden if name is valid. So since this is required, if there's nothing in there, name is not going to be valid, that would be not be hidden, and then once I start typing something in, name is now valid, so hidden will become true, and then form.valid will become true, and my submit button will become enabled. So with forms, one of the things that we'll note that Angular 2 actually uses RxJS under the covers quite a bit, including on forms. So if you like using observables and reactive programming, you can actually make use of that. One of the things that I'm not talking about much at all in this presentation, but the HTTP class as well as the JSONP class that lets you call services actually returns a observable. So what we're doing here in this service is we're setting it up so that we can do a search against Wikipedia using JSONP. That's going to return back an observable we're going to call map on it, which then is going to take that request and return the first entry from the JSON, which is going to be another observable that's going to get returned back to us. So that's the starting part of our form here. And then the actual setup for the form, you're going to see we have a term, which is a control. So you'll see then at the top, my mg form control is set to term, so that's binding it to the term object inside my component, and I made that a type control. So that's the first thing I do to set this up. Secondly, my array of items now is an observable array instead of this standard array. And if I'm using an observable array, you'll see then my ng4, I pipe it through the async filter. And so that way then it'll set up Angular so I can understand this is an observable, and it'll listen for changes and then rerun as the things change. So then my constructor, then I just set up my items to be linked to, on the term, there's a value changes that gets returned from it, which gives you back the RxJS observable, and now I can start using those methods on RxJS. I can do a debounce, which is basically saying I'm only going to check every 400 milliseconds to see if there's a change. My distinct initial change says I'm only going to fire the next event if that change is different from the last one. And then what switch map is going to do is going to take that term that they typed in the input field, pass it to my search, and then it's going to switch the results to the results that came back from there, which is the observable array of items. So you can see we basically just set up the search form, handling, including debouncing and distinct checks in a couple of lines of code. Okay, so we still have dependency injection. But dependency injection is quite a bit different than you're used to now. Let's take our hero service. So this is just a plain ECMAScript 6 class. It's got a list of heroes that's built from some static array, lets you get at your heroes. In Angular 1, I would register this as a service, passing in the name and passing in the reference to the class. Service in Angular 1 was going to basically call the constructor function of your object. So if you had a class, that works great. In Angular 2, I would pass in the stuff I want to have available to the injector as an array to the bootstrap function. So then in Angular 1, again, I would pass in a parameter that would be that thing I want to inject it, and then when I register that, I would have to pass in then the name of the service that I want passed in before I pass in the object. In Angular 2, if I'm using TypeScript, it's going to go ahead and look at the type that's being passed in that constructor and look it up that way. So I don't have to specifically say what type it is anymore. Now, if I want to be able to inject stuff into a service, I have to add an injectable annotation onto it. And that's what tells
Angular too, that when you register this service, that it also needs to have stuff injected into it before it's created. Now there's that little array of services is actually shorthand. So if you look at my bootstrap, where I pass in that array of services, that array of hero services is actually shortcut for calling provide hero service and then passing in options of use class set to hero service. And that's shorthand for creating a provider object, again passing in hero service, use class, hero service. So where you see use class there, if you want to use instead a value like you'd be doing today in Angular 1, instead you say use value and actually put the value object in there. If I want to do a factory function, I have to create my factory function, and then my provider, then I would pass in the type that it's going to return, which is hero service. I'm creating a hero service, passing a logger, and a service where I grab a variable off of. And then I also need to pass in the dependencies that need to get passed into that factory. And then I can pass in that provider in that way. You could also, so right here, you're seeing that we're actually just using the type of the class to look it up. You can actually also pass in strings, although they're actually wrapped in a class to be able to use strings. And you can also then use multiple. Now there's a plug for that, so if you want to have multiple things for the same type, you can do that. And that's useful in some special cases. Now these injectors are now hierarchical. So instead of just having one injector that's global, it's going to build up this hierarchical injection system matching your component tree. So let's say I've got a simple heroes application that's got a list component, and then each slot in the list, then I'm creating a card for each of the different heroes in my list. So what's going to happen then, I'm going to get an application level controller, an application level injector, and then my hero app is going to get its own injector that's going to inherit from the application injector. My list will get its own and so on. So if you look at this example, here's my hero card. That's at kind of that bottom of that tree, and I put providers or hero service. So where is it going to get that hero service from? Well, first thing it's going to do is it's going to look in its injector and see if there's one there. Well, it's not one there, so then it's going to go up to the component in the tree, in that injector. Is there one there? No. Go up to the heroes app injector. No. Go up to the application injector. If it's not there, it's going to create a new one and put it in its injector. And so then each card then in that case would end up with its own instance of the hero service. So if you're used to treating services as singletons like they are in Angular 1, you're going to want to put them all in that bootstrap, because if you start putting them on components, you don't know whether you're going to get a new one created every time or whether it's going to find one up the tree somewhere. And the other thing I want to note about this, if you're concerned about performance, is if your component doesn't actually have anything for an injector, it actually won't create one. It will just do some performance tuning and skip it there. But generally, be very careful when you're dealing with where your services are created now. So testing. Again, let's take a simple application here back to our phone service app. Simple component that takes a phone service that passed in, sets the value of phones. So this can be made very simple if you're just if you're doing unit testing and you're keeping your things broken out using services. I don't have to do any special thing. I can just go create a mock service and pass it in and create an instance of that component. And everything works great. So that's a nice advantage. But if you really do need to use injection, then we now have before each providers. And before each provider is a function that turns an array of things that need to go into the dependency injection. So in this case here, then, to be able to set up a mock phone service, I would pass into my array first I would call provide passing in phone service with saying use class mock service instead. So it's going to use my fake class up there instead, and then I have to pass an app component. And then when I want to use it in a test, then I have to call inject, passing in the class that I want to inject out of out of the injector, and then it would pass it into the function, and I can access it there. Okay, so a lot of you are probably in the process of writing Angular 1 code right now. And so you're going to have to start thinking about how you're going to upgrade this. Obviously, not a simple upgrade to go from Angular 1 to Angular 2. So right now, as you're writing your Angular 1 code, there's some things that you can start doing in preparation for moving to Angular 2. One is stop using controllers. Controllers don't exist in Angular 2. Anytime you want to build a controller, make it a directive instead. Angular component is also another option. That's basically a different wrapper for a directive that, right. Also, then when you're trying to use service only, because that's mostly what you're going to be using now. Again, Angular 2 lets you use different types of things, but it's a lot harder to work with. And if you can start using ECMAScript or even ECMAScript 6 or even TypeScript, that'll start getting you used to the different way of different type of code you're going to be working with. When actually sometimes to upgrade, there's a couple different options you have. You can do the big bang, obviously toss it all out, start from everything. They also have a way for you to do an incremental upgrade. And this is a module for Angular 1 called ng upgrade. So to use this, you're going to end up loading both Angular 1 and Angular 2 and the ng upgrade. Right. So you're going to have to be able to handle all that extra stuff. And then ng upgrade becomes a bridge between the two of them. So kind of the way you work this is you include Angular 2, the ng upgrade module in your application. Then you pick a component, probably control or maybe your directive, and upgrade it to the Angular 2 syntax. And then once you have it upgraded, then you're going to downgrade that new Angular 2 component that you made to run in Angular 1. Again, pick a service to upgrade. Repeat step 2 and 3, keep going until everything is done. At that point, then you can get rid of the Angular 1 bootstrap and dump your Angular 1 libraries. So to set this up, then you're going to go ahead and create your app as normal, but then you're also going to create an upgrade adapter, and then you're going to bootstrap that on the element that you've got your app on, and then also passing the array of modules that you want it to work with. And when I have, let's say, a product detail, I've converted that to an Angular 2 component now. It would then make it a directive in my Angular 1 application, and then I'll call adapter downgrade ng2 component. So basically make it look like an Angular 1 component to Angular 1. Vice versa, if I want to be able to use my new component an existing Angular 1 directive, then I would call Angular, I pass it in the adapter upgrade ng1 component, and that would make your directive look like a Angular 2 directive. Now, because we're using TypeScript, you're going to probably be using Node, because you're going to want to run the TypeScript compiler and use npm to install your services. So, how many of you here are using Angular with like a Grail server or Spring or .NET server, right? So, some alternatives that you have here, you can just continue to ES5 with Angular 2, because it does make that available. Another option could be you could introduce a node server in front of it and pop in proxy calls to that through to your existing Rails or Java server. So you start having that host your JavaScript and HTML and then make the calls proxy through. Another thing you could do is you could also set up your build process so that Node is part of that, and you're actually calling the TypeScript compiler to compile your code into ES6 and place it into your application. All right, well, that's the presentation. Any questions?
So, it looks like you've done both quite a bit in this presentation. Do you feel, I look at Angular 2, and it might as well be called circular, right? It's the same authors, but completely different, and at that point, I just look at it and I reevaluate the entire landscape, right? Like, do I want to use this? Having used both of them, do you feel it's way more complex in terms of And it's like all that stuff that I was loving to get away from when I was doing C#, and it's like all come back and just send it on me. Like, do you like it better? I mean, having used both, do you think it's better, or it looks less productive to me for certain things, for sure. But
Yeah, it's good and bad.
yeah,
There's,
the type safety is good, but like I found that I don't like type safety in UI stuff a lot.
yeah, I can be on that side too. I mean, on the good side, some of the way, if you ever look at the code underneath an Angular 1, it's not very great. And just the way that it handles modules is not the way you expect to use things in JavaScript. So this kind of opens it up a little bit so you can just use straight JavaScript and code. You're not having to put things in modules anymore. But on the other hand, though, there's a lot of extra annotations that you have to write. There's a whole new syntax. I mean, it is very much a new completely framework. And so it'll be interesting to see is how many people are going to just go ahead and convert versus just saying, well, why don't I just use React instead? It looks almost the same. So that's going to be interesting.
What are you in?
I think, generally, I think that light touch, the way we're going is that, we're already heavily invested in Angular, so we're going to stick with it. And I think what you'll end up finding is a lot of the bigger companies who have big, Java or .NET presence, this is going to look very natural to them, and they're going to keep going that way. People are used to being web, come from the front end experience or heavy JavaScript experience, are probably going to have to go on React.
I'm wondering how like subcontrollers, things like modal dialog controllers will translate. Will those things get their own components now, or will those be directed?
It'll become, well, components are directives. So if it's got like today, if you have a directive or a controller that's got some sort of HTML with it, a template, those will become components. Right.
I guess I'm a little curious in sort of composing like a tree of components. But ideally, I guess in my mind, a component you kind of want to make reusable, and it cares about itself. It doesn't care about the rest of the state. But when I think of a tree of components, I tend to think of like the very nested components are going to be really tightly coupled to their parent components, and I don't know. I guess without having done it, I'm not sure how you resolve that right now. If you have a state that is one very deeply nested tree of components, and you go down that tree, the child and branch out components are going to be really probably more and more coupled to the way that the architecture is set up.
Yeah, I mean, that's a design issue. But you do with components now, you can input parameters, output parameters. That's kind of what you want to do. Maybe make a, in our example here, we had, from their hero tutorial, there is a little, thing that displays the hero information once you edit it. That's something that can be used, let's say, in the list, but it could also be used on one page. It's a single page. So you can make reusable components crazy, but there also be, your main app component's not going to be reusable because that's going to be covering the whole app, and there may be stuff inside of there that's not. So it's really going to be kind of a design issue there. Nice.
Maybe kind of a dumb question, but besides the strict typing, if you wanted that and like Bird is better speed, like what are the real advantages of versus Bird 1?
Well, the advantage there is it performs a lot better, and just the implementation is a lot cleaner. They were getting to the point where, with the code that they had, they basically built Angular 1 was to start out just a simple little way for them to do prototypes so that they could borrow stuff to HTML they got from designers. And the code that they built didn't scale very well. So this is a ground-up rewrite that's faster. It's using the RxJS stuff underneath, so you can use observables. It doesn't have full two-way binding anymore, so it's a lot faster that way too. So there are quite a few good reasons.
I was going to add to that. It's also built with mobile in mind, so they designed it, like you said, to be more performant. So when your site's on a mobile app, the files are smaller, they load quicker.
And it also allows you to render your page on the server too, which is a big thing. That's an issue which Angular 1 didn't do very well.
I think, like you're saying too, Angular 1 was kind of written with more of a designer approach in mind, where it looks like Angular 2 is going to be much more developer oriented, which I think is going to have both positives and negatives, and we can see with kind of some of the complication with the syntax, but I think it'll allow us to write better applications just with a little more work.
And regarding the typing too, again, if you notice that there are ES5 examples where you don't need to use the static typing if you don't want to. But again, the downside is everybody's going to have TypeScript examples, so even if you're going that way, you're still going to understand it. Yes?
In Angular 1, I know they discourage the documentation use of NVNet, except for like prototyping things. With removal of scope, and I know some of the examples, is that creeping back into usage, or is that no longer verboten?
Yeah, I would say it's not anymore. It's now a callback on your components. You can put the code in there, and it's part of the component lifecycle. So.
You mentioned mobile and being, can you break things up into modules that are downloaded dynamically and things like that fairly easily? Is that still difficult to do?
I'm not completely sure. I haven't found a way to do that yet. From what I've seen, I'm concerned about it because you're kind of building this tree of things, and you got to declare what everything depends on. So, I may set up this app component, but then I got to say it uses this component, which means I got to import that component. That component gets imported, and now I got to import the stuff it depends upon. But there'll probably be some solutions coming down the line soon, I'm sure. Yes.
With one of the big advantages being that it's very performant, how performant is the inline as you go replacement of loading Angular 1, Angular 2, and Urberg kind of in real time? It looks like almost transpiling it down to Angular 1. Is that, do you notice that?
When you take inline,
Well, it looked like you were taking your Angular 1 code, rewriting it into this Angular 2 code, wrapping it in the functionality from NGBridge, which will then translate it back into Angular 1 code. Do you notice that when you're running things?
at this point, I actually haven't tried that yet. We haven't gotten to the point of that yet, so it's more of a documentation purpose, yes.
So I know LifeTech has been heavily invested in Angular in the last year and a half or so. So how long are you guys going to take to do this conversion to Angular?
We're still discussing that. So we will be, but it's again, it's at one point we build it, still in beta now, so most likely we'll probably be looking at it in the next quarter or so.
Is it going to be a 3-month project or a 6-month project?
Well, yeah, I mean, we're not going to be going back and just converting everything. It's a new project. We'll probably start picking it up as we go, and then we'll start looking at how we would handle existing projects. In some cases, we can't do the incremental option because we don't have the, something that's going to have the customer. We don't have to have them load all that extra stuff and, increase their download time. But in the case of internal stuff, maybe we can't use the upgrade stuff. So.
Is there a modular way where we can, if it's a big monolithic app, we can do it in, or this module runs in Angular 2 or this runs in Angular, unless it's a different whole server? Are there any ways we can?
Yeah, I think you could break it up. I mean, use break it up separate pages. You could have different apps on different part of the pages, different components. And so those are some things we'll have to look at there too.
I think they're backporting the new router for Angular 2 back to 1.5 in the next version. So I think you can actually route in between Angular 1.5 apps and Angular 2. So if you're looking to kind of modularly place Angular 2 apps within your ecosystem, you can still route between them and pre-existing as you kind of bring them over. Would be an option.
Yeah, that's a good point.
The use of the term directives is a little confusing me because the component is a main directive and then there's attribute directives. Is there a shorthand that you use when talking about the different types of directives?
Well, the way I look at it is a component is a directive that has a template. So that's something UI thing is showing on there. The structural directive is something that is going to actually take and modify DOM, right? So like any if that's going to hide or show or repeat that's going to stamp new stuff on there. Whereas the attribute is just something that's changing an element somehow. And in some ways, we kind of do that today with directives. You'll have a lot of times you'll create a directive where you'll actually just use the directive name. That's going to go and just place some section in there. versus other directives you might have, like, any source is an example where that's a little directive that binds the source property, to that.
In particular, when you use the word directive, you could mean one of the three. And
That is correct, yes.
so then do you say attributes or structural or components when you're specifying a particular type of directive when talking to people that either don't know or within the team or something?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they're definitely different things. Also.
If I could just touch on this, and I apologize if you didn't, I just didn't quite catch it. As much as I would love to go back and rewrite some of the apps I worked on in Angular 2, I think that the users and some of the other stakeholders just would totally not allow me to have that time. Is there any easy way or is there just any way to take an existing Angular 1 app and now I have a new feature, a new route thing to add to this, and this section is what we Angular 2, even though it's the rest of the app is Angular 1, when you go to this state or this route?
Well, again, the NG upgrade option that I showed you, that's definitely one option. It requires to load both side by side, but I think any incremental option is going to require you to load both regardless. And that allows you then to mix and match the two between different. Yes.
So you went over the route provider, and it was pretty similar to Angular 1. Is it safe to assume that the state provider is pretty similar as well?
Actually, I haven't looked at the state provider.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure that there is a corollary right now in Angular 2.
What happened to NG Transport?
NG Transport?
Yeah, I missed that.
Yeah, I didn't get that yet.
They gotta go. Looks like they're going to shadow now.
Any other questions? All right, well, thank you, everybody. Again, references here. This is all coming from the Angular docs, so it's definitely a great place to go out there and look and learn what Angular 2 does. And otherwise, I'll put this link out on the forum, and definitely want to spend time with you.
Use that one. It's connected. All right, thanks, John. Great presentation.
Thank you, John. The mic is off.
Check. Oh, check.
Okay, just real quick, going over our prizes. We don't have any special prizes status for you.
Yeah, 3.
Yep, so just to go over the prizes that we have available, Front-End Masters popped up with this pop-up, which I thought was kind of funny, being the reason that we're all here. So Front-End Masters is an online web learning course. Actually has many different courses about all kinds of different stuff. If you're looking to sharpen your front-end skills, it's definitely a great place to do it. We're giving out a 1-year sub here, 2 1-year subs here, which I believe is roughly $30 a month times 12, so it's quite a good value there. Pluralsight is another one we're giving out a 1-month sub for, single 1-month sub. Similar site, actually, I believe some of Front-End Masters content has made on here, but another place to learn things. It's going to be a great place to go check those out. Then also JetBrains, we're giving away a 1-year license for anything. Actually, I had a student try to buy everything, and I think it did work for a year. So you can technically use every JetBrains product for a year. If you would like to really get a large shopping cart going, it will allow you to do that. How you're going to do that, I don't know.
That's pretty much intelligent anyways, right?
Yeah, if you're using IntelliJ, but yeah. But if you want to pull them all down just for the fun of it, you're able to do that you can live like a king for a year. So anyway, we'll go ahead and commence the ceremony. Doug, I know Doug's here.
All right.
What's your choice, sir? JetBrains. Every license for a year. Congratulations.
She's getting time for all that.
Altamir.
Oh.
I know you're here as well. 1 year of front-end masters or 1 month of Pluralsight? 1 year? Gotcha. Both have really good content. Front-end masters is actually put on by Mark Urbansky, a local guy here. He does a lot of great things for the community. And front-end masters is definitely a part of the Twin Cities community. But not just local talent. Mark brings in national talent all over the place to come in and do talks. Really great workshops, really great content overall. Pluralsight is not local, but also really great. We just don't have the same relationship that we have with Mark, who was a previous Virtueller. Fun story, so previously worked here. So we have 1 front-end masters down. Jody. Jody, are you here? Shame. Shame on you, Jody. If you're an RSVP, you gotta show up. Just kidding. It's okay. It's all fun. Lance. Lance. Shame on you, Lance.
He was here.
He was here. Okay, for the record, Lance was here. Shame brought back. What if we never had this happen before? He was here.
No, that's happened before.
Gotta be here.
Yeah.
Gotta be here to win. Sorry, Lance.
No shame, no prize.
Yeah.
I wanted someone else to win a prize.
Are you throwing it back in the pool?
Yes.
What a guy.
You know, I actually just got a subscription to both front-end masters and Pluralsight. Can you get a t-shirt? It's expired.
Yes.
Just for the record, there's a deal on Pluralsight right now where you can get free 6 months if you go through, I don't remember the path that you have to go through, but yeah.
Through Microsoft. That's not a student thing, though. That's
No,
right.
okay. You just look up Visual Studios Pluralsight 6 months. They have a limited number of 6 months free Pluralsight subscriptions.
Awesome. Would you like to throw your hat back in the ring?
I'm gonna throw it back.
Tim here. Tim.
Longest.
Yeah.
Keep clicking that thing.
James. Chris Gibson. Chris is a prime student, so he gets shame. Not a big one. Aaron? Arun? John? Harley?
I got the funding masters last month, so I'm throwing it back to.
We've saturated our price.
Are you sure you want to 1 month Pluralsight? You accept?
Just take it so we can go home.
Ron?
Yeah.
You're here. Yes. Would you like a front-end master's license? Excellent. That commences us. Thank you, everybody.
We want that one.
You guys are somewhere, but that's a bit, yeah, that's yeah, it's decisions are so hard to make. Yeah,
And I knew all the other stuff You made it, I think it made it seem
Does that mean they're hiring me? What's easy enough? I was trying to do Yeah, I go to the here.
I know exactly. So we stay with them.
Yeah, no, it's like,
No, I
Exactly. That's a good idea.
I don't know. Now she's gonna. But again, it's one level. I know it's not real obviously, you should know that. There's other reasons. That was just dated stuff. Well, but I mean, it's like it's kind of based on.
Yeah.
I had some.
I would like to look for things.
Well, they have a 12-step tutorial. There's work. But I actually never actually easily. So, yeah. Good. Well, hopefully they have different stuff and they it hits all right? So. But now they're the meteors. Everything going to system jam, and now Webpack. And I didn't even hear Webpack was. So Reactive, we use template and not. Thanks for having us.
Well, thank you.
That's why I like small projects.
Oh.
Just go on the.
I really sorry, it's a fun place. Here we talk, we property management. This is actually a property management company. So, it's I started up with South Africa, so I know it's but yeah, that's very interesting
So I'm supposed to do that for a while, and it's like digital publishing. Yeah, see you later, everybody. Take it easy. JavaScript, like Node, and Stack is something I've been doing all review. Sure, have some experience with like PHP, or Java. Yeah, but just looking to get like an internship or like, you know, just get like, but basically right now I work as a busboy. So sure. And I work on, you know, and self-education for 3 hours a week.
Right.
So I am like just looking.
Well, I can tell you the, I told you that I do the 2 programmers, they both, one was forever. And he just went back to school. Like I do this semester. Long story. And I wanted to get out of the situation. But, yeah, the guy needed sort of like so, well, you know, we're going to start up to one other kind of things, right? Yeah. We go for the.
Yeah. I know, I kept thinking transit. Yeah.
Wow, that's actually, I would do it just for learning how to work in a team, like my long-term goals with programming are to create like, you know, interactive textbooks or like.
It's a great for the
That's what
yeah.
Sure, but I really do want to get experience.
Right. Right, well, again, I'm not against it at all, because I've done it in the past, and, my email address is valid, and all this phone number, I guarantee I won't answer, so you will text me to actually call this number, but, yeah, it's, well, we actually started to write a access and note in it. And it's always been connected to that number, and so it's not even connected to the phone right now, but the voicemail part, that code just keeps, I don't even know what it's located, but it still runs. And then runs with no one calls it, so.
Well, yeah.
But that email address.
Yeah, I know. We can try it.
I would, again, like I said, I use the one guy I highlighted was a student, coding those kinds of events, right? From the university. That's why I kind of like these pop-up ones. Teach them stuff that I have been used right now.
Yeah, I mean, other people are dropped out of the founders comp side instead of people who want to.
This is good.
Some of that worked out great. Yeah, I think we need to find a little bit better spot for the speaker.
Oh my God, I was already.
First 3 rows are good, but if you're sitting in there, you can't.
Yeah, so like, probably that's more.
I can argue.
And then we gotta figure out how to strategically position this video so that this side of the room.
I would have gotten mine, but I think, schools again, it doesn't matter, but,
Yeah, but that's the thing, it's like,
it's all here.
Sideways. Like I did like my
Yeah,
master's on super soft stuff.
we'll play around with it.
So like each.
I didn't even get it. Yeah,
It's
this is
actually
sweet.
on like lawsuit workers. But I'm also super interested in.
You got some extension costs and everything.
Generally though, I think
These ones,
well,
so this is all good.
underrepresents what can be done with what we were doing and overstates what can't be done. And since the 80s, like Gary Down and this stuff, like just coming out. I don't believe that, like, people have real motivations, and you don't believe that you were going to fall through this.
All the chairs got moved, and no one had to say, can I take a chair away from her? So it should be fair. But, like I said, just, yeah, reach out to me, that's our company. 5 that I have, but, like I said, when I'm in the it's an odd situation, because I have to manage, the other companies while also trying to run the software company is my passion, it's what I've done most of my life. The other companies are getting more mature, and you just hired a whole bunch of people. They're great. But they're all in the, well, I'd say there's only 6 people in the office. So this is small. When I say small, we're super small. The management company is, we manage 400 units. It's a pretty small company. Not only for me, it's guys that are never in the office. So, that's the deal, but, so I work a lot of weird hours, and that's for, on the code spot, but it's always worked out well, even with, like you said, when those guys started, I basically didn't have more experience. They built the entire first site, that's how it runs today. That's cool. Don't get me wrong, I just bumped into code today, I'm like, oh my God, what's that? But, you know, that happens. And now it's fun because as we go into the 2, I know Sukan is right. So
Honestly, go to ES6 punch. Feel about that.
To me, TypeScript is really no big deal, but it's all.
I mean, really learning a syntax only takes you days, right?
Right.
Actually, draw force analyze it, like, it's only like 60 backs, and 60 backs only takes a certain amount.
Oh, yeah, it's, I'm sure writing a small thing in if you go to, not people love this old website, but our new, the other two companies, like Landlord and Urberg, so it's all HTML, so I admit, it didn't even need to be written.
Separate thing.
Right, it was the form, but I wrote it in Angular 2 easier, so, but it was fun, you took each little piece and you kept making components, you sort of did the tree, and then I'm like, well, just wait, the form actually repeats in 5 pages, so make that a component with inputs and outputs, and you quickly, I realized, I'm like, these are things. So it's funny when you hear people when they first see it or whatever, and they're like, oh, that's harder. And I'm like, I guess I don't know if I did things different than some of those folks or whatever. I think it goes right.
So to me, it's super different, right? Like,
right.
I was trying to learn Emacs list because I learned Emacs.
Sure.
But that like is like actually just like a completely like different way of thinking rather than JavaScript.
Right.
But this is just like replacing few symbols and like adding like more class-based hierarchies, which is actually just syntax.
That's fine. Since I, of course, come from using classes, that part was nice. Yeah, I need more C# than Java.
Before policy education, I could just like understand classes and like after that understand like, why I should have been.
Well, yeah. I learned programming basic when I was a kid, and then assembly. So I
How do you do assembly? Like, do you
slowly.
It has to be a compiler that like has a higher
level. Yeah, I mean, how many instructions were there in assembly? Like, I mean, there's LDA load into the accumulator, STA, STX, STY. I mean, there's like, you're just writing straight to memory, right? So you're writing for that specific, right? This was on an Atari ACTA, and I never got your home crew developing apps. Yeah, I just, well, I was a hacker, right? So I switched from that to breaking into, modems, like breaking into. Things that I was under 18, you can get away with, right? Yeah. The freakers were people that abuse phone systems and stuff like that. So I was, when I was a kid, we all had, but then I, got into my whole life.
This is a great place for JC to reach.
I'm not a amazing developer by any stretch. I'm a risk taker, I guess. I start a lot of things, and I can prototype faster than anyone else. So I write shitty code, but I also get a product out there. And then I hire